So if anybody is eligible, there is Johnson and Johnson appointments that just opened up.
I've got mine a week ago.
Tomorrow. 11 slots available.
I'll take 5.
You'll take 5. I'll tell you that right now. I see 2.
Is that at Samaritan?
Samaritan, yes. I see 2, but he's telling me 11.
Scott, can you hear me?
We prefer not to, Bobby.
I just got headphones on. I wasn't sure if they were actually coming through, but I take 2 of those slots.
Okay, what's going on with this?
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. If we can get whoever's not speaking to mute their lines, appreciate it because we have a lot on the call today. At this time, I'd like to call the March 2021 General Services Committee meeting to order. I'd like to read the preamble at this time. The meeting is being conducted under the extraordinary circumstance of a public health emergency, COVID-19, and under Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.1, without permitting public in-person access to the meeting, authorizing the meeting to be held partially or completely with members appearing by remote conference call or similar service. And the meeting is being live streamed via the web and recorded, including the participation of members appearing by remote link. Having said that, do you want to do roll call, Bob, first, or?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
First, in terms of General Service members, Legislator Reed.
Here.
Dodo.
Here.
McBride.
Here.
Grant.
Here.
Cantwell.
Here.
Maxon.
Here.
Ferris.
Here.
Drake.
Here.
Peck.
Here.
Nabawanic. Monticelli. Johnson. Calarco.
Here.
Jarrow. And Gray. Where'd you go?
I'm here.
He's waving his hand.
We're all set. All 7 members of the committee are present.
At this time, are there any corrections, additions, deletions to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll enter those. At this time, according to your packet, we have representatives from Jefferson Community College here, from Center of Community Studies with their yearly discussion on the survey. Bob, would you like to add anything to that?
No, other than we have 2 very prominent individuals who have been involved with the survey for several years now, but the quarterback of the team in Joel alone wasn't able to join us this evening. But Larry is here and Andy is here, so we can just turn it over to you guys to begin the presentation.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Bob. Whoops, I tried to share my screen and it said there was an error. Hold on one second.
Saw it earlier.
There we go. Okay, so it looks like it's showing. I believe it's showing. Is it showing okay? Sorry, this is my first time using Google Meet. I'm so used to Zoom that they look a little bit different. So I hope you guys can see the presentation now. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for having us first. Again, as Bob said, Joel is off on sabbatical this semester, and he just happened to not actually be around this week. So you are, I guess I shouldn't say stuck with me and Andy. You get the younger group, though we probably don't have as much energy combined as he does. So we'll do the best we can here. Again, we'd like to thank you for allowing us to come in March. Typically, we come to see you in June. So this is a little bit different for us, a little bit different for you. We're coming at a different time because we actually had to delay the annual survey for 2020 until October, opposed to the traditional April when we do the survey because of COVID-19. So we'll actually be collecting data for the 2021 study in about 3 weeks. So we'll be back on our regular schedule. Hopefully you'll have us back in June to present those results just in a couple months from now. So what I want to do is just highlight some of the presentation of findings here. So again, just there's Joel. You guys are missing him today. I'm sure everyone is missing his typical comments and banter. But you do have me and you do have Andy Draper. He is our newest member of the team. Hopefully we get him an official title with the center here pretty soon. We're working on that. But in the near future, we should have 3 full members at the center opposed to the just 2 of us with Joel and myself. So we want to make sure we recognize our sponsors. Jefferson Community College, obviously, the college contributes significantly to the time release that we have and financial support, and Car Freshener for their generous donation so many years ago that allowed us to create an endowment fund that helps us offset some of the costs of these studies. And of course, the Development Authority of the North Country and the North Country Community Foundation, who give us sponsorships on a yearly basis. So we want to make sure we always recognize them. Without their support, it would be much more difficult to try to conduct these research projects that we conduct every year. So what do we want to talk about today? We have shortened up our presentation a little bit from what we've typically done in the past. Just we know that you have a lot of stuff on your agenda. And again, we also know that we'll be hopefully seeing you in a couple months from now. So we want to talk about what we actually studied this year. How we conducted the research, a couple of differences from what we've done in the past, and then probably what is potentially most interesting, or what do we find out this year in this year's survey research. So first, what did we investigate this year? So we essentially had 9 different sections of the survey that we looked at. Typically, we have somewhere between 6 and 10 different groups of questions that we take a look at. So we looked at 7 of our traditionally tracked 21 quality of life indicators. We have a group of 21 that we rotate in and out and look at those. We looked at some personal opinions, some of those issues that we introduced for the first time in 2019. We decided to follow up and see if there were any changes in some of those attitudes and opinions in 2020. We did ask some questions related to COVID-19. Back in April, although we delayed the data collection for this particular study, we conducted a specific research study about COVID-19, and we revisited some of those questions to see how people's attitudes and opinions may have changed from April of 2020 into October of 2020. So we revisited a couple of those ideas. We've tracked people's personal financial situations for about 13, 14 years now, so we looked at that again. What direction the country's heading, along with the county. We looked at people's opinions on the trail systems in the county. One of the issues that we know potentially could come into the plate of local officials is potential sale and growth of marijuana for recreational purposes. So we asked some questions about that. And again, we asked some questions about internet access in the county, knowing that there are other studies in the work, obviously that are currently happening now by the Development Authority with the ECC group looking at internet access and so on and so forth. We also went through, and because we did surveying in October, we're able to actually do a little bit of a self-test. Some of you might have seen Joel's presentation on this a couple of weeks ago. Because we surveyed in in October instead of April, we had the opportunity to check our methodology and try to make our own predictions on what may have happened with the presidential election. Really, every 4 years is the only time we as opinion researchers have a chance to check our results. We get to see what the actual truth is. So we did a little bit of a self-test to figure out how good are we doing based on the fact that we have made a couple changes to our methodology since the last time we had an election. So again, how did we conduct this study? So you can see that some things were similar, some things were very different. You see that we use Zoom, and you can see that we were not in our traditional call center in downtown Watertown. We actually created what we've kind of coined the remote call center. And you can see a window there with myself and Joel up in the top left corner. I don't think Andy's in this picture. I think he might be in a breakout room working with an individual student, and 23 students making phone calls from their homes. I know some of them were in other, I know one student made phone calls from the local fire department because they had better internet access and so on and so forth. But you can see a very different experience. And again, we have them all on there. Let's see, we had 38 participants. So at that time when Joel took the screenshot, we had 36 students making phone calls. You can see a lot of them are there in mid-sentence. You can see them with their mouths open in the middle of them speaking. So that was the biggest difference. We weren't in a physical location in Watertown. We were all over the county and even in some of the other counties as well. But again, survey instrument developed, back in 2000. A lot of core questions that we renew each year, rotate in and out. This year's study, we had a total of almost 600 participants, 587 total participants. 300 of them were collected via an online email invitation, and about 270 were talked to over the phone. So we had about 270 phone interviews, about 310 email invitation. Again, what you want to keep in mind is for any of the results that you see coming up in the next few slides, we always talk about the margin of error. So the margin of error that we had for this particular research project was about 4.5%, a little under 4.5%. So any of these statistics that we see, just keep in mind, the real value of the population, if we talk to everybody, should be about, plus or minus 4.5% from anything that we see. Okay, so a lot of the same, but again, a very different actual physical experience in terms of the phone calls that we made this particular year. Okay, so the findings. Okay, what did we find out? Okay, so I mentioned that we tracked 7 of our 21 indicators. A lot of similarities to what we've seen in past years. What you can see is the 7 indicators we looked at this year. We evaluate these 7 things on our typical excellent, good, fair, poor scale. They are ranked in terms of most positively perceived to least positively perceived. Okay, so you can see the most positively perceived aspect that we talked about this year, or that we asked about this year, was the quality environment. Policing and crime control is second. Overall quality of life, those are the top ones. Kind of in the middle, you got quality of K through 12 education and healthcare quality. And the 2 at the bottom, again, it's pretty, if you take a look, overall state of the local economy, availability, good jobs. Okay, so on a relative scale, we can see that environment, policing, overall quality of life. Okay, and then at the bottom, we see some of those economic indicators are not quite as positively perceived. Okay, the red and the pink bars are the quote unquote good responses. The gray ones would be the poor, the not so good. Okay, so if we look at the bottom, the grays at the bottom, a little more on the concern side, and the reds and the pinks up top, much less the case. Now, with that said, one of the things that we noticed is, again, we've been tracking these characteristics for 20 years. You can see that we've got 21 years worth of data. What we've got here is both the positive ratings, okay, the excellent, good in the top table, and the not so good ratings, the poor ratings in the one at the bottom. What you can see, and what I really want to point out here is, look at the availability of good jobs. Okay, we talked about the fact that those were not quite as positively perceived. Well, when you take a look at the excellent and good combination, the 32%, okay, is the highest that we've seen in 21 years of tracking this characteristic. So even though it was one of the lower positively perceived in the relative scale, it's still the highest that we've seen in 20 years of doing the survey research. On the other side, we saw that the poor rating was toward the top. Okay, 28% was the highest level of poor. But if you take a look, that's the lowest that we've ever seen in 21 years. So the positive ratings are the highest we've ever seen. The negative ratings are the lowest we've ever seen. So even though relative to the others, they're not quite as positively perceived, they're still better than we've ever seen in 20 years of research. So interesting, couple of different spins. Relative to other things measured this year, not quite as good. Relative to what we've seen in the past, really a good way to look at it. Okay. We did go through, and just so I believe Bob has distributed the report, so you may have had time to take a look at it. We did do our typical cross tabulations. Okay. So you can see that we did comparisons by age group, affiliation with Fort Drum, political beliefs, gender, education, and household, as we typically do. So again, you can go through, and in any of these things that we talk about, you can find the particular table in the full report, and you can look at any of these deeper looks into what potential demographic factors might be driving some of these attitudes and opinions. Okay, so we have that. We have cross tabulations. We did do the comparison to the other counties. We did the North Country comparison. Again, if you take a look at The availability of good jobs, the ones that, again, were the least positively perceived, 32% excellent or good. Notice that that's higher than either of the ratings in the other two counties. So even though it was the lowest of the 7 indicators in Jefferson County, that 32% is higher than the 25% in Lewis County and much higher than the 13% that we saw in St. Lawrence County. Okay, the 28% poor, the lowest that we've seen in St. Lawrence or in Jefferson County in 20 years. But again, when you look at St. Lawrence, it's almost half the St. Lawrence rating, and it's about the same as the Lewis County rating. Okay, so again, it gives you just another perspective on, what do these numbers mean? Okay. The second group of questions that we took a look at, we looked at the personal opinions questions. Okay, some of these issues that we've talked about in society and our communities, and again, we took 7 issues that we talked about that we asked about in 2019 to look for a trend, and then we added one particular. We added a new issue. We asked about systemic racism and social justice, just because it was one of those major topics of conversation. And what you see here is you kind of see a relationship of the more strongly opinionated, the more polarizing opinions on top. Okay, same-sex relationships, 75% of people that we surveyed consider same-sex relationships all right. 20% consider them morally wrong. Okay, so you can see all right composed to wrong. Okay, almost a 4-to-1 ratio there. Okay, very, very different opinions. As you work your way down through this particular graph, the opinions become closer and closer and closer. Okay, so if we look at racism and justice, 77% major problem, 22% not a major problem, again, about 3.5 times. Okay, responsibility of healthcare, okay, 67 to 28. And if you move down, the 2 closest opinions would be people's opinions about former President Trump. Good for our country, it was a little more than half, 53%. Bad for our country, about 43%. So those are the closest of those 2 opposing opinions. Okay. If you want to look at a little bit deeper dive into these, we did look at the intensity of each one of these items. Okay. So again, you can kind of look at climate change, healthcare, President Trump, building a wall, so on and so forth. The darker of the color bars, the dark blue, the darker red, are the people that strongly agree with that particular side of the issue, where the lighter blue and the pink or the lighter red are the ones that are only somewhat. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we highlighted was, for the most part, people who feel one way or the other strongly feel that way. They're really not close to the fence. They're really far across, they've really landed across the fence. They're not teetering one side. A lot of people are very strongly in favor of that particular opinion, opposed to potentially on the fence. Okay, so that's something that we just want to see. Something that we notice when we look at the analysis is many of the people are very firm in what they believe, rather than potentially being persuaded one side or the other. Okay. What changes did we see in these particular, issues from 2019 to 2020? This was something that what I did is I identified the biggest changes that we saw, and what you find is they're not huge changes. The biggest one that we saw was people's opinion on building a wall on the border. Big change in do not build a wall. Okay. Big increase of 16% from 47 up to 63. But after that, it was really hard to identify anything that was a major, major change. These are the different issues that changed by at least 5%. Most of them are pretty similar. The 61 to the 68 is a 7% increase when you look at responsibility for healthcare. If you do the actual analysis, it's not statistically significantly different. Okay, so again, it's not far enough to be apart to say, yeah, we can definitely say that opinions have changed. That could just be some of the differences that we see because of the fact that we sample at random instead of doing a full census. Okay, so really the idea here is pretty consistent in people's opinions between April of 2019 and October of 2020. Again, what are some of the county differences that we saw? Okay, in what ways do the opinions of people in our county differ from the neighboring counties? And again, the 2 biggest differences would be, one, the wall. Much less support for the wall in Jefferson County than in Lewis County and St. Lawrence County. Much more opposition. And again, identifying racism and social injustice as a problem is higher in our county than we see in the other 2 counties. Okay, so those are really the county differences. So the big county differences that we saw, where Jefferson County really differed from the other 2 counties together. There are a couple of other issues where maybe Lewis County might differ in opinion, but we're similar to St. Lawrence County and those types of things. These are the ones where really the representatives from our county had a difference in opinion from both of the other 2 counties. Okay. We did ask a couple of questions about COVID-19. Again, we did conduct a more extensive study in April about COVID-19. And again, you can see, what big changes did we see over that 6-month period from April of 2020 to October of 2020. So you can see, obviously, the mask wearing has changed significantly. Okay, we were surveying in April. It was the first week of April. It really was only about 2 or 3 weeks into what we're understanding, understanding the pandemic at the local level. That's obviously gone way down. Notice that mask usage has gone way up. We asked about concern about what they see in the media. You can see that concern of what they see about COVID-19 in the media has increased over the 6-month period. We asked about satisfaction levels with the response from different organizations, both at the national level, the state level, and the county level. And the thing that we really noticed here is if you look at the satisfaction levels at the state and national level, the satisfaction decreased between April and October. But if you look at the local level, okay, the Jefferson County Public Health, it actually increased. So of the 4 different constituencies we looked at, only one of them saw an increase, and that was at our local level. The state level, you can see, is the biggest drop, okay, 66 to 52. And the national level, the CDC, just a slight drop. And then the government and President Trump, a pretty sizable gap of about 11%. The last question we looked at in terms of COVID-19, we asked people, what are your opinion? What's your opinion about COVID-19? Is it a major problem? Is it a minor problem? And you can see that 80% of people, in October identified it to be a major problem, a slight decrease of what we saw back in April. In April, it was up in the 90%. So you can see that definite changes in response to that. Okay, back in April, it was about 10%, a little less than 10%, thought the worst was behind us. In October, it was up to about 30%. If we look at believe it was a major problem, worse to come, it was in the mid-80s. In October, it was down to the 50s. And again, you can see the percentage of people who thought it was not a major problem actually increased as well. In April, it was about 5% and went up to about 15%. So you see a pretty big increase in people who believe it was not a major problem between April and October. Personal financial situation. This is one of the economic questions that we commonly track, and you can see we've tracked this every year since 2008. This is one of those things that if you look, might be a little bit surprising. Maybe it's not. But again, some of the aspects I think probably might be expected. Others may not be quite so. If you look, in 2019, April 2019, 30% of people identified that things had gotten better for them financially in the last 12 months. I don't think anybody would be shocked if we see that in April of 2020 that had dropped down to 13%. Right? So I think that would be expected. At the same time, notice that the percentage of people that said things have gotten worse, although it did increase, did not increase close to that same amount. Okay, so we can see a large constituency of people believe things hadn't gotten better, but not a huge increase in the number of people who said they've gotten worse. And if you look from 2018 to 2019, we saw a little bit of an increase. We saw a little bit of an increase from 19 to 20. But again, notice that with the exception of the last couple of years, 2014, 2015, 2016, it hovered around that 20% range there as well. So other than really low values in 2017, 2018, that 20% is actually pretty similar to what we've seen since about 2012. So it's really not much worse. And again, it's actually a little bit lower than what we saw back in 2012, 2013. Let's see, what direction are things heading? Okay, we asked a couple of questions about the direction. We asked, what direction do we believe things are heading for our county, and what direction do we think the country's heading? And again, a couple of key themes here. Locally, we think 43% of people think we're heading in the right direction. 23% of people think we're heading in the wrong direction. Okay, so it's about a 2-to-1. It's about twice as likely to say things are in the right direction opposed to the wrong direction. But notice at the country level, not only is the right direction a little bit lower, the wrong direction is much higher. So about a third of the people say we're headed in the right direction as a nation. Half the people say we're headed in the wrong direction. Okay, so again, it's twice as many people, more than twice as many people think the country's headed in the wrong direction, where locally it's only about a quarter. Again, you can look at the county comparisons there. Again, right direction, not quite as positive as Lewis County, a little bit more positive than St. Lawrence County, but notice that the wrong direction is actually lower in our county. So again, you can kind of take a look and see that, in Lewis County, it's 50 to 30, but in our county, it's 43 to 23, a little bit stronger in terms of the contrast there. It's almost a 2-to-1 where Lewis County is only about 5-3, so a little bit different in terms of that, but similar in each of those two counties. We did ask a couple of questions about potential legalization of recreational marijuana. We asked about whether people would support or oppose the sale of marijuana, and we also asked whether people would support or oppose allowing farmers to grow and profit from it. So again, you can see generally there's much more support than there is opposition to both of these potential items. If you take a look, support 59%, opposed 31% for the sale, so it's about a 2-to-1. Allowing farmers to grow and profit, 68% to 26%. So let's see, it's about not quite 3-to-1, but more than 2.5-to-1. Okay, so we can see definitely support if that is potentially something that could be a county decision in the future. Couple other items to look at, and we'll be about to the end. We did ask some questions about internet access, as I mentioned. Most people identified that they do have access to the internet. Less than 1% of people, you can see it's 0.4%, say they don't have internet access at home. So almost everybody has that access. We asked a couple of questions about whether people are currently working from home using the internet or learning from home. And you can see about 30% of the participants say they're working from home. And it was about a quarter of participants said there's someone learning from home, both at the K through 12 level and at the college level. Okay, so it's about 1 in 4 are learning, about 3 in every 10 are working from home. Again, the other item that I did mention that we did a little bit of a self-test. This graph could be a little bit intimidating. Really the key thing that you want to look at here are the darker gray bars and the darker red bars. So the darker gray bars represent the actual certified results after all the absentee ballots were counted. The red bars are the predictions that we made based upon the data that we collected. And if you take a look, we didn't do that bad of it. We did a pretty good job. We were very satisfied with what we did. Notice specifically in Jefferson County, the certified count was a support of 58.4% for Trump. We estimated, or our guess was 55.7. So if you remember, think about the idea of the margin of error. The margin of error on this was a little bit different because we only asked these questions to people who planned on voting. So the margin of error for this was a little bit higher. It was actually a little bit higher. We were well within the margin of error for all 3 counties that we did the prediction for. And again, we really just wanted to make sure that we could test our methodology, make sure that we're actually going through and giving good estimates. Are we doing good research? And we were very happy with what we saw. You can kind of see the numbers a little bit harder here. Again, the actual difference, we missed by a little bit less than 3%. Our margin of error, because again we had a slightly smaller sample size here, was about plus or minus 5.5% instead of 4.5%. We were well within that 5.5%. And you can see that both in Lewis County and St. Lawrence County, we were also well within our predictions. We did go through and do a little cross tab on this as well to try to give you an idea of were there any differences in opinions based upon some of our demographic characteristics. Right. And again, I tried to be a little bit efficient because I know you guys have a pretty full agenda. If you do have questions, as I mentioned, Joel is on sabbatical, but he has promised me he's checking his email a little bit more regularly. He just finished a project today, so he's going to be a little bit more in touch with his email. But again, the thing that we really want to let you guys know about is, I mentioned it kind of in passing, the 22nd annual survey is scheduled for April 2021. Right now, we're planning on doing survey research in about 3 weeks. So if there is anything that you guys would like us to include, we are still working on the survey instrument. We have been known to make changes to the survey instrument even the morning of our first night of calling. If there is anything that you are interested in knowing that you could definitely use our help with in terms of data collection, we would be happy to work with you and come up with some questions to put on that survey instrument to help you make any decisions in the future. We realize it's a pretty quick turnaround, but again, it's just the nature of what happened because of the delay that we had with COVID-19. Maybe it's a good thing so that it won't be put on the back burner. You guys will maybe have it fresh in your minds, and maybe in the next couple of weeks you can come up with some things that you might be able to use us for. So I talked a little bit quickly there. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Larry? Larry, I know that was a lot to cover in a short period of time. We appreciate you making this one of your first stops. and as always, lots of comprehensive information to consume. We appreciate your and your team's efforts in getting that information. It is helpful to see the trends and what people are thinking in the community in that poll setting. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Anything else for Larry? Again, thank you for your efforts and your team, and appreciate you presenting tonight. It's kind of awkward with the format, but we got through it. So thanks, Larry.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. At this time, Bob, do we want to get into the resolutions, please?
I think we should, yes. First resolution this evening is adopting Jefferson County Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Plan.
May I have a motion, please?
Ferris?
I heard Bobby Ferris.
Second, Doldo.
Second, Anthony Doldo. At this time, I would just like to mention that I did serve on the committee and was impressed with the quality of the meetings, the preparedness of what we had to do in the meetings. It was well thought out, well and comprehensive, and very productive. As a group that big, sometimes you could get sidetracked, but the group was very focused with their mission, and I think the product came out reflects that. And I want to thank everybody on that team. I know if we say one person, we'll miss somebody, but thank you to that entire team for your professionalism, your input, and the time you took to participate. At this time, I think the sheriff is on. Sheriff, would you like to make a mention before we ask for questions?
Sure. I just honestly just want to echo what you just said. Legislator Reed, the input and the discussions that we had were so valuable, and it's definitely reflected by the recommendations that are printed in the report. And I think we have an outstanding agency, and I knew that when the governor came out with the executive order, but I also realize that there's room for improvement everywhere in the world. And I think the things that we identified are definitely something that are possible, probable, and make the agency a little bit better servants to the community that we're so proud and honored to serve. But my parents raised me right, so I couldn't let tonight go by without saying thank you again to the stakeholders that put their time and effort into this. There's nothing more valuable than time. You don't get it back. So thank you, everybody who put their time into this. I appreciate it, and our community is going to be better for it. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. At this, any questions from the group? I don't see any hands. I don't hear anybody. So I think that means we can go ahead with the vote. All in favor, aye. Accepting?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Thanks again for stopping by, Sheriff. And those meetings were, like I say, well run, and you were appreciative of everybody's time, and everybody was prepared. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Yep. Next resolution.
The next resolution this evening, adopting Jefferson County Plan for Operations in the event of a public health emergency involving a communicable disease.
May I have a motion, please?
McBride?
Mr. McBride.
Cantwell.
Mr. Cantwell. Discussion. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Third resolution is amending the 2021 county budget to reappropriate funding from the New York State Department of Transportation for the New York statewide Opportunities for Airport Revitalization Marketing Grant.
May I have a motion, please?
Doldo.
Legislator Doldo. Second.
Grant.
Legislator Grant. Discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is amending the 2021 county budget and capital plan to recognize 2020 revenue from the passenger facility charge at the Watertown International Airport.
May I have a motion, please?
Motion, Doldo.
Legislator Doldo.
McBride.
Second? Second, did I hear Legislator Cantwell?
Yeah, can't wait.
Legislator Cantwell. Discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is authorizing implementation and funding in the first instance 100% of the federal aid and state Marchicelli program aid eligible costs for the transportation federal aid project, appropriating funds therefore, and amending the 2021 county budget and capital plan.
May I have a motion, please?
Ferris.
Legislator Ferris. Second.
McBride.
Legislator McBride. Discussion. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Amending the 2021 county budget in relation to the capital road machinery fund.
May I have a motion, please?
Ferris.
Cantwell, second. Legislator Ferris. Discussion. All in favor, aye.
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 Motion carries. Number 8.
Amending the 2021 county budget in relation to recycling and waste management.
Number 7, actually. May I have a motion, please?
Grant.
Legislator Grant.
Doldo.
Legislator Doldo. Discussion. All in favor, aye.
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 Motion carries.
Next is authorizing agreement for the development and submission of the Community Development Block Grant application to the New York State Office of Community Renewal and the Development and Administration of Grant Program.
May I have a motion, please?
Ferris.
Legislator Ferris.
McBride.
Second. Legislator McBride. Discussion. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Authorizing agreements in connection with the New York State Snowmobile Trails Grant and Aid Program and amending the 2021 county budget in relation thereto.
May I have a motion, please?
Cantwell.
Legislator Cantwell. Second.
Ferris.
Doldo.
I think I heard Ferris first. Legislator Ferris. Discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Last resolution is authorizing agreements for an additional allocation for the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee Stop DWI Crackdown Enforcement Grant and amending the 2021 county budget in relation thereto.
May I have a motion, please?
Doldo.
Ferris.
Doldo. Second.
Ferris.
Legislator Ferris. Discussion. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Motion, no, none opposed? Sorry, it's a little choppy. So, that motion carries. On the first resolution, I didn't use an actual word discussion. I just said, does anybody have a comment? So, I take that as everybody was good with it, so I didn't actually use the word discussion, but that concludes all the resolutions. You have a monthly department report from the planning department. And also, if you look at the end, it's an invitation to participate in the Jefferson County Broadband Survey, which is sponsored by Jefferson County and the development of the North Country. So I did take it. I encourage everybody to do it. It'll be well worth our community if we get a good understanding of where those areas need to be addressed. Any department heads here would like to add anything? Okay. Does anybody on the committee have anything? Anybody else? Appreciate everybody's time. Hopefully on the next general services, we'll be able to meet face to face. I hope if the infection rate keeps dropping, and I would look forward to that. I know it's awkward. I appreciate everybody's patience. We've tried to reach out one-on-one to make sure we're communicating as best we can as a team. So as always, please feel free to reach out to me or anybody if any questions or concerns. At this time, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Grant?
Legislator Doldo, thank you very much for coming. Good night.
Night.